this evening, we're talking about the dirty E word. Emotions. Emotions. We all have them. We wish we didn't, because we have a weird relationship with them. We don't know what they actually are. And so that's one of the many reasons that I actually offer this workshop. Because once you actually know what something is, really, you can have a relationship with it. And also because it's profoundly helpful for this thing called healing and for living. I have notes to keep me on track on this one, because otherwise I would just talk all night and you'd like to go home at some point. I do have to get on a plane tomorrow morning. So things like that. You don't know, it's my niece is having her first kid.
Oh.
And so we're invited for the baby shower, and so we're gonna go see the munchkin. I said, Jasmine's no longer a munchkin. We're gonna see the fully grown-ass woman who has a munchkin in her tongue. And so celebrate her. So that's why we gotta schlep ourselves down to Floridia. Ooh. To the swamp that swamps me. Yep. All right. So again, why talk about emotions? We all have them. We can admit it. We have emotions. Yay! You're like, everyone's quiet about that because we're Midwesterners. And we're like, no, we don't. Other people have emotions. And they're wrong. The only places we express emotion are if there is a Michigan game or other drivers. In traffic, that's where I watch all of you like, oh, we're fine, just fine, living the dream. People going into, Milk smash. We need outlets. And part of that is because we actually don't get, and we're gonna cover tonight, how physical emotions really are. And no one likes hearing it when I tell them. It's like, when they're saying, oh, I've got all this pain, I'm like, I'm feeling things going, yeah, there's some intense emotional energy. And they're like, fuck you, Dr. Matthew, it's not emotion. It's just my back. I just slipped on it wrong. What's wrong with you? Take it away. I'm like, that's clearly not emotional at all. You're fine. You're just fine. Living the dream. But it's actually very physical, the way that they express. And when we know the rules of how they do that, we're actually better empowered to be able to move it and use it, which is handy. And lastly, this is important because most of us, we don't use this emotional energy particularly well. And we know that because chronic pain is one of the ways that it will express, straight up. Also, most chronic diseases have a strong, actually, lack of emotional component. Because chronic disease is when emotion is designed to mobilize change in the physiology. And we'll geek on it in a second. But if you have a mountain lion in the room for a while, if you have a mountain lion in the room, what's your first response usually? Run. Run! Yes, get out of there. That's called fear. Fear mobilizes all of that response to run, to get out of there, to leave, to get as far away from, old mountain lion there as possible. Now, if you're stuck in the room with the mountain lion, and he's not hungry yet, but you've had to move in with the mountain lion. It's now been more than an hour. It's now been more than a day. After a little while, you stop feeling anything because your whole system goes numb. Because anything could happen at any moment, but you just can't live in that kind of anxiety. So you're like, Kitty! Kitty gives me special love nibbles. Right? And so it shuts down. And that's actually one of the factors behind a lot of chronic disease processes. Lastly, and this is not lastly, one more bit. Immune system heavily involved in that as well. But also lastly, we realize emotions involved with quality of life, right? Not quality of life, life enjoyment, not just checking off the boxes and rotting slower than your friends. I mean, we don't get to the end of the day, end of our days and go, gosh, I checked off my list. There's no fulfillment to that. Actually, they create fulfillment, which is one of them. Sorry, I get very excited. That's why there's a And so it's also because Italian and speak with hands. But that's one of the fundamental factors for why we need emotions as well. A huge range from health to quality of life, AKA actual health, not just sucking. So tonight we're going to be playing, and this is going to be interactive shortly. I'm going to get the whole, all the words out of the way, and then we're actually going to be engaging in a lot of processes that help you to be able to engage with, mobilize, and move, and start practicing the range of the emotional spectrum. Because out of curiosity, how many of you know there's more than just fear, anger, contentment, and vaguely satisfied. Okay, happy. There's a broader range than that. And each one is necessary, but I get ahead of myself. So let's just start with what is an emotion anyway? It's not your attitude. Your attitude and emotion are completely different. People will just like, well, talk about bad things going on, but I'm fine. Like having a positive attitude. Attitude is mental. Do you get your mind and emotions are separate? Okay, have you ever had a time where you thought you shouldn't respond a certain way, but you responded a certain way anyway? Your mind and emotions are separate. There's how we think we should be, there's the beliefs of how we're supposed to be, there's what's appropriate and all that stuff, and then there's the chemistry that initiates instant change. Emotion is chemistry and energy to initiate instant change. Let's go back to our friend fear for a second. You are walking down the road on your cell phone, like people do, maybe just in your little bubble, in a posture that's awful for everything. And you're just walking around on this thing, and next thing you know, you hear a screech to your left. Before you have time to think, your head whips around, and your whole body goes, ah! And leaps out of the road that you accidentally walked into because you stumbled into the crosswalk. Was that your mind thinking, oh, I should probably move now? Or was that your whole physiology just saving your life? That is emotion. It is instantaneous energy before the radar of mind that mobilizes us to take instant change. I say this because if we don't value something, we can't influence it. A lot of us try to get rid of our emotions. We have antidepressants to try to squash the bad. We have anti-anxiety to try to squash the bad. We'll try to meditate them away. We'll try to exercise them away. We'll do anything possible to just go, la, 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 I'm fine, everything's fine, living the dream. It's like the dog in that meme. If the house is on fire, are you supposed to sip coffee? Or are you supposed to be like, what the hell is wrong with me? Get out of here. Emotion mobilizes us. And so it is a profoundly useful and healthy thing. Thank God for it. If you didn't have them, we could all sit around intellectually justifying horrific things. Oh, wait, in that human culture. And a lot of the rules we learn, whether from our families or from our cultures or from our faiths or just from being on earth, are to try to actually mute and control this emotional energy into an attitude. Because emotion instantly changes things. And how many, everyone likes the idea of change when it's the ones we like. But the fact is, sometimes we have to make changes even when it's not comfortable. In fact, the whole point of discomfort is to mobilize us, because otherwise we could be too deeply comfortable in something not working. So what we value, we can influence. If we can develop a value for how every emotion is actually a powerful and useful thing, we have more capacity to actually be with it and navigate it and use it for what it's good for. Fear will save your life. Anger will set a clear boundary and make sure that you no longer let yourself be run over. All of these, disgust will make sure your body purges out stuff that is not healthy for you. Grief will mobilize you to really get what matters to you. We try to shut it all down, but the reality is like sorrow, same thing. We only feel that depth of sadness when we actually have lost something that matters. It attunes us to what matters. And it helps us be able to fully resolve all the attachments so we can begin to move on. We shut it all down or try to rationalize, understand, and we mute the healing process. We're living in a life of management, in a straitjacket, going through the motions of what's acceptable rather than actually being a fully vibrant human. Emotion is life-saving in that way. It makes instant change. And not just on a headspace life level. The chemistry of emotion, it's called neuropeptides. Anyone ever heard of Dr. Candace Pert? She was the first woman into the National Institute of Health back in the 90s, 80s, 90s. And what she did, do you realize that no one knew how painkillers worked until the 80s and 90s?
No.
Yeah, they had no clue. They tell me that we have to do everything evidence-based, but let's talk. Let's not, that just gets me grumpy, which is a different emotion. Yeah, her mission was actually, she discovered how the opiate receptor, how painkillers work. And by the process of that, she realized that the painkillers, like the opiate receptor, it didn't just bind pain-killing molecules. It was what's called a neuropeptide receptor. What are neuropeptides? Good question, glad you asked. Because we think of neurotransmitters as, chemistry for emotion, like serotonin's the happy molecule. not exactly. The science hasn't actually validated that since the 90s. They're like, yeah, not exactly. That's why if you pump up a lot of serotonin in people, they get erectile dysfunction, lose their dreams, and have a lot of other challenges. They're like, oh, dopamine's the reward one. Kinda. Kinda. But not. It's not the neurotransmitters in the brain. It's these neuropeptides, these chemicals that bind to every cell of your body that actually mobilize emotional response. And she found that because the signal for pain is an emotional chemistry. It's a neuropeptide. Why is that? Because the point of pain is to do what?
Awareness.
It gets attention and then what?
Change.
Mobilize action! Awareness without action is anxiety. FYI. Awareness without congruent action will create freak out. This is, awareness plus congruent action. Change. Pain was designed to create instant awareness, something ain't right, and then mobilize you to move. Oh my gosh, just like fear is designed to go, oh, increase awareness, something ain't right, mobilize to move. Anger, bind, something ain't right, mobilize to move. Joy, something is right, mobilize to move. In a different way. Love, something is right, mobilize to move towards. While the general theme is to move away from or towards it, still there's a broad range of this chemistry and it binds on every cell of your body. Dr. Candace Pert was the one who discovered that, and then she met Dr. Donnie Epstein, developer of this, and they started working together and geeking out, and it really validated a lot of Donnie's theories as to how things work. Because all these receptors, we thought the problem was, oh, well, there's a lack of the chemistry in the body, and that's why people are feeling bad. You know, with the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the antidepressant drugs, which have a side effect of increased risk of suicide, how could the happy drug make you more likely to kill yourself? Because it wasn't actually that chemistry. It's not the lack of the chemistry. It's a lack of the ability for it to bind. See, those little receptors, they're not all the same shape. And they change shape. In fact, that's the big thing. They change shape. And that's what we're going to be exploring tonight, because they change shape because of very physical things that you all can do. I know. So, stay on target. And that is the very next thing we're going to play with. The quick thing before, though, is the highest concentration of all this emotional chemistry thing. It's not in your head, and it's not in your gut. What Dr. Pert found, and what was validated a bazillion times afterwards, maybe not a bazillion, I lost count, a lot of times after, the highest concentration of these neuropeptide or emotional molecules and their binding sites are found
In the spine.
technically in the dorsal horn, or the backside of the spine, where all of the nerves from your senses connect to the spinal cord.
Wow.
So basically everything you sense, including, because how many of you realize your eyes, they're just extensions of your brain, but all those, the nerves you can hear, or your ears, or your smell, or even taste, all of your senses are profoundly influenced by what happens right up under your skull. It's called cranial nerves. That's where they all come through. And so all of your senses are heavily influenced, like all the information comes in, but then immediately your central nervous system decides how it feels about it before it sends the info to your brain to tell you even what's happening and what you think about it. You know, it's a confirmation bias kind of thing. You're already in a state of high emotional chemistry. You feel something comes in, you go, yeah, that's clearly a horrible thing. Or, wow, that's clearly the best thing ever. Sure, he eats puppies, but they're the best puppies. We do not see the world as it is. We see it as we are. Specifically, through this nerve system of ours and how much emotional chemistry is currently dominant. And so, that's why when we're palpating your spine, we can actually feel a lot. And you're like, oh, I slept on it funny. Maybe 2% of the time. Reality is much more closely connected to all this. So, what changes the shape of those receptors? I could tell you, but I'm going to have you all feel it instead. And I'm not going to sit up here and go, oh, because it's much more practical. And we're going to make this real for a second. I'm going to just, for a moment, just ponder two events that really just, shall we say, feel strongly. One negative, one positive. So just take a second, I'll cue the Jeopardy music. But think of, what are things that when you think about, you could still feel like a strong emotional charge? Like if I think of like how it was the day right, it was 20, yeah, there it is. Right before shift in our old building, it was 2:55 on a Thursday afternoon, April 2nd. And I'm ready to go in because we had like full tables already. There were people coming in. And my front office assistant at the time, Gwen, runs up and goes, Matthew, there's a phone call for you. And I take it and I hear that my dad's body was just found. It's an easy thing for me to focus on. I can feel very strongly when I think of that. So that's one of them. The other thing will be a very positive. Think of, for example, we're going to just collecting these so that when we do the exercise, it becomes even more real. The other one, I could think of a collection. I mean, but heck, the fact that that crazy woman, Carrie, said yes, still is like, what the heck? How did this happen? And I can very instantly just be like, wow! It's a combination of joy and bewilderment. But I'll take that as a positive. So, do you have two things that you could ponder for a second? Because we're going to show you how you can actually shift things pretty quickly. I'm sure you all have one. Cool. So, because you're all upright and you just went through that, you already had a sense of what they feel like. Now, here's where we're going to make it easy. Everyone take your head and do this. Take your shoulders and do this. Good. Now, basically, schlump. Schlump into the schlumpiest position. Now, in that position, like you're texting. Cool. Now, in that position, focus on that negative one again. Focus on that painful experience again, and just notice the intensity level. Does it feel more or less intense?
More.
No shit, Sherlock. Yep. Now, just for fun. Sorry, that was. Focus on the positive one in that position. Does it feel more or less intense? Can you even find it?
No.
Cool. Okay, sit upright. Thank you. Yeah. Now, wasn't that fun? We're gonna do the opposite one now. Now, instead of you're gonna take your arms, roll them up and back. In fact, they might be on the lap of the person next to you. Make a friend. Make a friend. This is how we do things. Intrinsic care, boundary-free zone. No. Make a friend. Just open up like the arms and the hands like this. Lift the upper ribs right here. People tend to arc from here, but instead of just lifting the head and chest, tilting your arm, head up, and even tilt the eyes up. Just for fun, change your facial posture too. Attempt to bring the corners of your lips towards your eyeballs. Now, in that position, focus on the really painful thing again. Notice the level of intensity of how it feels. And then focus on the really positive thing again. Notice the level of intensity and how it feels. Okay, now everyone, back to comfortable neutral position again. How many of you noticed that it was the same event each time? You were focusing on the same thing, both the really painful and also the really positive in each posture. How many of you noticed that the event itself felt different depending on the position you were in? We do not see the world as it is. We see it as we are. Now, yes, there are painful things that happen. Yes, there's horrible things that happen. But depending on the state of your own system will determine how resourceful you are being able to navigate it. How do you have that annoying friend who every time something goes wrong, it's an amazing opportunity, and they actually make it into an amazing opportunity? Or on the flip side, you have that friend who no matter what's going well, for every silver lining, they can find the big black cloud. Yeah. The state of the system, especially the positioning of the spine, is highly involved in this. Can you throw the fishing pole at me? Better yet, just walk it to me. I'd like to keep my eyes. So here's how those little lock and key receptors, because that's what they're called, where all these emotional molecules bind. It's a lock and key receptor. The receptor itself is flexible, but depending on the tension on the cell, it changes the shape of the receptor. In a neutral upright state, it could maybe bind the emotion for contentment. Yay! It can't quite find angry, it can't quite find sad, it can't quite find joy, but it can bind that perfect middle thing of. Now, if it's like stretched, and so it's pulled into a different shape, it can no longer bind content. It can no longer bind joy, but it can bind, fury, and it can bind despair. Yay! Change the shape again. Take the pressure off. Say if the cell is now loosey-goosey. More open receptor. Joy can bind. Content kind of bounces off because it's like, why do you want content when you have joy? Fury bounces off because it got nowhere to bind. Despair bounces off because it didn't know where to bind. This is a mechanical process. You know how when I mentioned when you all started care, this whole fish and pole thing about your spinal cord? Yeah, it's actually a mechanical fact. The nerves from your brain physically attach in your neck here and here. Depending on the state of stress in the system, whether it is in a, shall we say, upright, happy, neutral, if it is in a tense, flexed, sympathetic or stress mode, or whether it's in the loosey-goosey bliss mode, it doesn't just end in the spinal cord. And that spinal cord has nerves that connect to how many cells of your body?
Oh.
Every effing one. The current estimate is that you have 70 to 100 trillion cells. You are a community. Every one member of that community, every cell, has between 3 to 9 nerve endings for the brain and spinal cord physically attached to it, like the strings of a marionette puppet. The state of the nerve system itself mechanically pulls each bit of you into a different shape, position, level of tension, or tone where it can actually vibrate with life. Those slight, subtle, or not so subtle changes impact the receptors on every cell that is connected to the organ under your hat, allowing it to bind or not bind different emotional chemistry. So basically, posture is kind of important. And that's also why what we're doing every time we take care of you is assessing for actually that kind of tension, that kind of tone, to ensure that your system is actually flexible and adaptable to be able to move through the whole range required. And this is why one of my least favorite questions is, well, should I stay in this position? Is this the posture you want me to be in? No. No matter what posture it is, the answer will be no. Do you know why?
Things change.
Because things change! Exactly! If you're always in one position, you're not adaptable. I mean, you're like C-3PO, great, That's not the one in Star Wars I'd want to be. I mean, R2 is saucy. I don't even think So, the key is to have a system that's actually adaptable, flexible, so it can bind what's needed in the moment. So that when the nerve system fires a signal saying, hey, this is what's required, you can immediately adapt the posturing that allows the proper emotional chemistry for things to happen. So when it is sad time, you can immediately find that and then be able to move through. Because emotion is designed to move through us in seconds to minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. True emotional chemistry makes its impact in 2 to 3 minutes, sometimes as quickly as 30 seconds. It's when it lasts longer, it's because the mind is whipping it. It's a thought whipping it. It's a concept whipping it. See, the emotion will follow thought, but that doesn't make it a healthy emotion. We want the emotion to actually do the thing it needs and then give feedback to thought. For the chemistry to immediately stimulate the response required and then give feedback to thought as to, hey, FYI, I know you thought everything was groovy, but did you see that he's got a younger blonde or whatever and a convert? No, something's not right. We're attempting to mobilize that. Or, holy crap, that's actually completely inhumane and horrible. We can mobilize. Or, oh wow, things are not as bad as I thought. Wow, I can actually relax. Oh, it's just I was listening to all the bullshit they kept telling me because they want to mobilize a certain level of emotion in me to keep me pissed off and angry all the time or afraid. And so that way I just keep tuned into that channel. Oh, how about I don't? How about I connect with humans? Make sense? So, one of the sneaky little take-homes you just got is really the posterior and matters. And so out of curiosity, what posture are you typically in while scrolling the little doom box, or human little leash, the black mirror? What position? Is it one that is conducive to, is it one that's conducive to, or is it one that's conducive to, So, I know that you're all gonna use them, but maybe don't look at the news on your phone. Because if you're in this position, how are you gonna respond physiologically to it? maybe watching the news if you're gonna do that. In anywhere that puts you in a position like this, put the TV on the ceiling. Okay. Okay. Or at least more upright so you can ponder and consider. Does this make sense? Cool. Just for your own sanity. I had someone who, when she came in for her visit, would do a double session each day because she came from a ways away. And the first session, we take care of her, great change in her spine, huge change in her energy, her physiology. She'd go out and sit in her car like this and listen to talk radio. Came back in, looked like she was hit by a truck.
Wow.
Because most things on talk radio are trying to actually keep you in a state of anger or fear, mobilizing towards like what is, like whatever they've decided you need to be mobilized towards. You know, brainwashing. So actually wash the thing, clean it. Don't have it. Coming to my TED Talk. So, I digress. So that's one of the bits. Secondly, though, this is also why most pain you'll feel more when you're in this position, because it amplifies the negative emotional chemistry. Now, sometimes people will really try to stretch into this to try to, you know, like numb it out. Because if you actually take this entire thing and bind it this way as much as possible, it presses the spinal cord, you know, that emotional like organ, up against the back of your vertebra, decreasing the blood flow to it so it goes numb. So when people are like, oh, but I'm so much more comfortable like this, I'm like, you're dying. If you want hospice care, by all means. But please don't hire me for hospice care. I'm here to help you live. Hey, you want to go fishing? So, yay. So, yeah, that's part of why okay, pain, cool. Oh yeah, chronic disease. Yay, we mentioned the alarm thing. But what I didn't mention, the immune system. Ooh. Immune system was a system that suddenly became popular a few years ago. At least the idea of it, which was really cool. Everyone was talking about it. Yay! If only we knew how it worked. So that's another conversation. But one of the pieces about it that most people don't realize, white blood cells. Yay, leukocytes. They are the ones that go around the little seek and destroyers, right? The ones that go forth. They have a whole family of them, you know, the monocytes and the macrophages and all that delightful stuff. But the white blood cell family is not just, well, how does it actually know when it's time to go from seek and destroy into chillax, or from chillax into seek and destroy? Those little cells are surrounded with a crust of those neuropeptide receptors. And when they pass through the capillaries, the tiniest little blood vessels in the body, they brush against the cell membranes of the capillary, where the nerve system then actually has like signals that it sent, like basically puts the neuropeptide chemistry through it needs. It's because it's such a narrow place, it can brush up against every cell and it can signal them like, hey, 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 hey. And go, hey buddy, you're needed. Whoa, let's go. Or it's like, hey buddy, stand down, soldier. And that's one of the neat bits about that. Now, this is where your posture doesn't directly affect your white blood cell. I was really clear on that one. But it does mobilize how many signals the rest of your body is going to send to those little white blood cells. Now, if your physiology and your posture and your whole nerve system is stuck in a state of the life is a war, what do you think is going to happen to those little whiteys?
They'll be overused.
They will be overused. And what does that do in the long term? Actually, let's start with the short term. White blood cells are involved with something called inflammation. Are you familiar with inflammation?
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah. Is inflammation something that is good short term but bad long term?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's good short term because it helps rebuild certain connective tissue and heal. But it's horrible long term because it creates chronic breakdown. It's behind most forms of, well, let's see, diabetes, cancer, chronic pain, heart disease, bad cholesterol. We think, oh, it's the food you eat. It's inflammation. Inflammation actually damages the blood cell membrane, so the cholesterol binds into it and makes plaque. So all this kind of stuff and more. The immune system mobilizes inflammation when needed, but if it's always in a state of constant war, it'll keep inflammation too high, which is behind all other chronic disease processes. Oh, by the way, depression as inflammation of the brain. It has much less to do with the, should we say, the neurotransmitters, and is more a systemic inflammation response. And that's why one of the cool, interesting side effects that wasn't as much publicized, but there was research on during the COVID times, was finding COVID was more of an inflammatory system, an inflammatory virus. And that's why a lot of folks who had it had this nasty side effect of increased depression. Cardiac stuff, yes, but also depression. So, the more you know. So, the basic emotional state will be heavily involved with that, the proper immune function. Because long term, you can also have autoimmune, where the body starts attacking the parts that it deems as no longer helpful. Now, there's a flip side. You're like, well, why shouldn't I just be stuck in joy all the time? Yay! I'll just be happy and high. A few things, and this is also a brief other TED Talk thing. Yay, I'm glad that people are going to be going less and less to jail for basic drug crimes. However, weed is not a health food. Good talk. It mutes the expression of the emotional motor system, which is the system of your central nerve system that allows for instantaneous change. So you got the brain itself, which sends the signal. You got the muscle, which responds, and the bones, which are the passive units. The emotional motor system, that whole chemical system, is what determines how quickly you can respond and how much energy you have to make an effective response. And one of the things with like weed and all of its stuff is it mutes that response so you can be very comfortable. But it doesn't have the energy for instant change. It doesn't allow for that responsiveness and reactiveness when needed. And so that emotional motor system is quite useful. Again, it's a tool for making people comfortable. And again, I think hospice care is great when it's hospice time. I'm just not a fan of living like I'm on my last days. I digress. Oh yeah, here's actually why I'm not digressing. Because it links into the, if everything is in constant happy chemistry all the time, guess what the immune system thinks? It's all good. We're great. Living the dream. So what doesn't it do? It don't work. It don't kick ass and take names. And you'd think, okay, well, that's not good if you get infected and stuff. What actually is the most dangerous thing with that? Your body needs to be able to tell when a cell has gone rogue. They found that when people who are having like late stage cancer, like stage 4 metastasis, where it's starting to spread, the ones who live are not the ones who go into gratitude. The ones who go into, I've had a great life. It's been wonderful. Here's all the gifts, and they count their blessings. They're the ones who are on their way out. The immune system stands down in that kind of chemistry. It's the ones who basically, they've been a little bit dick. But it's because they're like, no, I have too much to freaking live for. There is too much for me on the other side of this. Either I got too many gifts to freaking give, or I'm going to be there for my freaking grandchild's graduation, whatever it is. Enough, I'm doing this. Those are the ones who actually come through the most powerfully, the most sustainably, the ones who are highest percentage of the survivors, and not just survivors, but thrivers. Because they find, their chemistry finds a way. Everything in them becomes more finely tuned towards, okay, what is no longer me? It may have been me once, but it's not anymore. Clean it up. Make sense?
Yeah.
Plus, also with that chemistry, you're more likely to follow through on whatever's required. Yeah. You're like, I will do whatever it takes, as opposed to, yeah, when I feel like it. I mean, it's good. So, yeah, there is that. Immune system, yeah, heavily emotional organ. Now, what's another easy thing you could do if you want to shift your state pretty quickly? Because you can't really just walk around like this all the time, right? That would just be so weird. I mean, trip over things. This one comes from the University of Southern California. They did a research study looking on depression. And they had 3 groups for this study. One was on a drug. Drugs. The other one was not on drugs. No drugs. And then the third one, they did a test. I just wanted to see. I don't know why exactly they chose this, but it's one of the coolest things. Everyone stand up. You guys out there, stand up, unless you're driving. In which case, pull over. Don't stand up. We love you, we want you to live. So here's what this quote-unquote control group did. Everyone just stand upright, like there's a string from the top of your head lifting you up. Cool. Take your hands and just put them at your side like this. Now take this thing on your face and make it go towards your eyeballs. Smile and take deep belly breaths. They had people doing this, looking into a mirror for 20 minutes a day. And this was people who were not bummer depressed. I mean clinical depression. I'd off the world depression. They did this for a month. Just looking in the mirror, deep belly breathing, upright posture, seeing themselves smiling like an idiot in the mirror. And do you know what happened? They all did the things you were just doing. They started laughing. It was more effective than actually, sorry, I forgot. They were testing 2 different drugs, and then this was their control group. The control group was better than either drug. Now, you don't have to do it 20 minutes a day, but if you actually just started the day looking in a mirror, gazing into your own beautiful face, smiling, open body posture, deep diaphragmatic breath for 5 minutes. Having tested this for a month myself doing that, your whole attitude changes. It makes me wonder why I forgot how to do that. That's why I need to. That's why I taught this so I can remember. I get to do that again because it helps shift the baseline of your system. Like how you start the day really supports the rest of your day. If you just started the day with that, you'll notice your whole attitude improves because there's more positive emotional chemistry influencing your mind. The attitude is improved by the emotional chemistry instead of the mind going, I have to be happy. I have to be happy. Happy over everything. It's like, okay, no, it's easier because your physiology was already tuned to that. Make sense? Super easy, really useful, barely an inconvenience, just taking those few minutes. Why the looking in the mirror part? Can't you just do that on your own? You can, it'll be useful to a level. Here's why the looking at your own beautiful face in the mirror. Mirror neurons. Now there's a new name for them now. I've forgotten how they were rebranded. Because it's probably named after a dead white guy. As it goes. Sorry, this is everything in medicine is named after a dead guy who decided to put his name on it as opposed to the actual function of the thing. That's why I like mirror neuron. It reflects the function. But basically, what you see around you, your system models. You can take a seat if you like, unless you want to sit. But what we see, we model. And this is why, for kids, we think so many things are genetic. Oh, depression runs in the family, anxiety is in the family, back pain's in the family. There are very few actual genetic conditions, like trisomy 21, Down syndrome. That is straight up genetic. Very little else is. And we'll get to that in just a second. Oh, done. So happy. What happens is these little mirror neurons help us learn by modeling what we see around us and experience around us. What we see, our system mimics. And this is why those delightful little kids, you accidentally say the wrong word at the age of 2, and they have just learned a new word. They're going to use forever. Situations. Or when you look at them as you start to walk, and it's like, they have your little posture. Because they model your posture. They model how you move. Which is something we're about to cover why that's really important too. But they also model your posture. And they also model the things that you can't control, which is your stress level. You ever been a kid in a house where everyone was trying to say everything's fine, but you knew everything was not fine? Yeah, they feel. Their whole little nerve system attunes or entrains to what's happening around it. It's really smart. Thank God, it's instincts. If there's lions around, you need to be able to feel what's up and instinctively respond. Well, these mirror neurons can be used to help us learn beyond just our childhood ages. This is why it's good to look at who you surround yourself with. And if you find that you're surrounded by all your grumpy friends, well, congratulations, you're also grumpy. Find some happy people. If you're always surrounded by angry people and you're finding yourself getting a little grumpy, cool, get engaged with things that also actually uplift you. It doesn't mean avoid the crap out of everyone, because everyone needs compassion. But it does mean make sure that you actually surround yourself with some things that inspire you. And when you actually are looking at your own beautiful face in the mirror and seeing your own self smile, you become an inspiration for yourself in that moment. Your own nerve system goes, oh, happy's available. Joy is available. Oh, it's available to me. Because it sees you doing it. And you're like, I'm totally bullshitting yourself. If you're gonna gaslight yourself, do it that way. Do it in a way in your own favor. Because we're all being bullshitted by a lot of things anyway. Bullshit yourself in a way that actually is helpful. Does this make sense? Cool. Otherwise, we become a lot of angsty, nihilistic teenagers. That's so overrated. So, now the movement thing, how our bodies learn to move when we were little kids and how they move as adults is also useful, because one of the last bits they find on how emotional chemistry moves See, according to the psychological research studies, apparently, emotion is Italian.
Oh.
It would make sense when you think about it. Why? Because emotion actually moves in the body, not through thought. Thought likes to arrest it. You see someone like this and you're like, how are you feeling? I'm ecstatic. I'm practically just orgasming with joy. You know it's full of shit. Sorry, it's really over the top because it does get the point across. You know, it's like, I'm thrilled. Developer of this stuff, Donnie Epstein, was talking to his grandkids one day. And the grandkid was like, Grandon, why are you so angry? Donnie's like, I'm not angry. Why would you say that? He said, well, tell your face. Emotion moves through our body in 3 ways. One is facial expression. Facial expression is highly involved with emotion. And that is why when you actually can make yourself just put on a ring and say, what the hell am I doing? After a few minutes, you start to believe it, especially when you see it. It changes your attitude and your chemistry. Second thing is wave-like movement of the trunk and extremities. And this is why on the table, when we adjust, we look to see not only is there that breath, but eventually movement waking up in the body as it's able to start shifting its dominant emotional chemistry patterns and to start creating new attitudes and new habits of function. As the spine begins to move, the more we know, not only is it relaxing, but the emotional patterning is changing so it can start building new, you. Actually changing the brain rather than just helping it. Third bit, we have like movement, trunk, extremities, facial expression. Oh yeah, sound. Facial expression, wave-like movement of trunk and extremities, your hands, and sound. Emotion is Italian. It talks with its hands. It's very expressive.
And loud.
And it's loud. It moves. And this is part of why, when they do studies on animals, they did a study with animals that I hate to think of how they did this, but they prohibited them from making sound and then caused injury.
Oh.
The ones that were able to make sound healed faster and had less scar tissue. The ones that did not make sound healed slower, had more scar tissue, and developed chronic pain. Now, we humans are too polite. We contain all the sound. I'm fine. We think it's a measure of strength, how tough we are. I won't let them see me bleed. And you're just bleeding to death inside. We have to find a way to be able to move it so the system can change. Not just tamp it down, but literally move the chemistry, because otherwise it's binding in there. And all this emotional chemistry, these neuropeptides, when they just bind up and can't express, increases what's called glucocorticoids. What are those? Inflammatory shit. So we gotta be able to move it. Make sense? Yay. So here's how we're gonna play with that. And we're gonna play with it. And I assume that you all are kind of crazy because you came here tonight. So I respect that. Every emotion has different habits of facial expression, sound, and movement. And most of us, we are not well practiced at a broad range of them. We kind of do all the same thing for the same thing. So we're going to give you an opportunity to explore a gentle range of emotion together, surrounded by other crazy people. Because they're not going to judge. If they do, fuck them. Pardon my language, but sometimes profanity has been found, especially the language, the words that you learned were completely wrong when you were a small kid, like up to the age of like 7. Those words specifically are heavily linked to venting emotional tension out of the brain, decreasing tension on the amygdala, the fear and anger center, as well as pain relief. Yeah. So, fun fact, the more you know. We're not going to be all swearing at each other though.
Oh.
Although channeling your inner Samuel L. Jackson sometimes is amazing. There's so many situations in life I think, what would Samuel L. Jackson say right now? Oh, that makes me so happy. But I digress. We're gonna stand up. We're gonna move the chairs out of the way. For those out there, again, if you're driving, you can do this when driving, but you need to keep one hand on the wheel. So you really have to be an Italian. You go like, blah, 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 blah. But it's best when you have them all. We're gonna want to move Happy a little bit, or Happy will figure out Happy's life. Happy's a good dog. Yeah. So, last bit on this. This is also why they did a study on tweens who had been given Botox. Why are you Botoxing tweens?
Yeah.
Seriously. But they found that because that their faces could not do the whole range of expression, they were actually unable to pick up social cues from others because their system couldn't mirror it. It's not just from what we see, but literally the body, the mirror neuron must be able to model. And if it was inhibited from modeling, it couldn't pick it up. So they actually developed an emotional illiteracy where they couldn't respond to these cues from others. Folks, own your wrinkles.
Great.
Yeah.
They are signs of a life well lived, but that's another conversation. So, at least, when I started coming up, at first I was like, and I'm like, okay, who wants to be young and immortal? I have a story. I have a
That's right.
life. I have wisdom and occasion. So here we are. So make sure that you're going to be able to move your arms and not smack a friend. Unless, of course, you really want to build anger. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the first emotion, we're going to start with the least favorite, the fan favorites. Fear. How does fear move? Yeah, it moves away.
Or frozen.
It can freeze, but it will try to move away, and if it can't move away, it will freeze. So we're gonna be doing the movement, how fear moves. Second thing, what's the facial expression of fear? Wide-eyed. Okay. What sound does fear make? Yes. So now here's the key. To have it make a shift in the physiology, you got to make the sound and the movement and the expression for at least between 7 to 15 seconds. We're going to go for the 15 side because we always got to go a little longer than
It's
like.
like, what's happening?
So,
It's like,
shall we play with fear for a second? Okay. The face, the sound, and the movement of fear. Ready? Take it off. Emotional palate cleanser. Okay. How y'all feel now?
better.
Better. That's the thing. When we just hint it up, we get sick. We get anxious. But we just start getting, oh. The chemistry can instantly change. It can move. Second thing. Okay. Disgust. How does disgust move? It's like, it either is another move away in aversion, like, or it also, what face does it make? And what sound does it make? Exactly. Let's do it. Disgust. 1, 2, 3. All right, take it off. Oh. There's a little extra. It's got a little of that side movement to it. It's less. Now, fan favorite, anger. And that's where there's like the whole room goes, nope, I'm gonna do it. Okay, so quick reminder, anger was one of the fundamental things that actually saves a life when there's metastasis. How's that? Anger is essential for actually setting a clear boundary. Now, very few of us had healthy anger modeled. But here's a great thing. Never too late for a healthy childhood. Right? So let's just make it easy. It's just movement, expression, sound. Anger is it is not a running away, is it? Oh, hell no. Anger is an advance and conquer kind of thing. Does anger have a lot of arm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anger has a lot of arm movement. Cool. What facial expression is anger? Is it? No, it is Hulk fucking smash. Cool. Lastly, the sound of anger. Pretty straight up, right? So, if you won't do it for yourself, consider through this whole mirroring thing, if you do it, how many other people might actually be able to finally move that? We're not separate. Everyone is physiologically connected and energetically connected. By you actually saying, okay, I will help to move this, you may actually help set some other people free. Worst case scenario makes a much better story than the rest. Because what you do shove down will express elsewhere. Move it for those who can't. Shall we?
Yeah.
Uno, dos, tres.
Happy's so scared.
Abby, actually,
She can't hear.
yeah. See, we just projected onto the dog.
But could she feel?
Could you look at Happy's eyes? Happy's eyes right now, like I'm cool. We have a lot of stories wrapped around that particular emotion at Enter Midwest. And that is why, as in general, for proper emotional regulation, humans need 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night. If Midwesterners need 7 to 9. Because we push harder, but we also shove a lot more down. So in order to actually get the proper rest to do it, it takes us a lot more energy. Better to just move this and not just at a Michigan game. No. Because anger grows up. That chemist, that little receptor has just a slight variant to go from rage to courage. Courage.
Oh.
Yeah. If we shut off the anger, there's no room for it to grow into courage. If we shut off the courage, there's no room for it to grow into determination. If we shut off the determination, there's no room for it to really show up into sponsorship and supporting others, because you find the fire and the courage to find a way to help them. Ultimately, it grows into compassion. There's a reason for it. It's just, it's a funny family. Candy. For example, how would courage show up differently than just anger? How would courage move, sound, and face? Yeah, you're gonna want to put that on the dog. Because courage is also a forward motion, right? I mean, it starts with the I will not back down, but then it steps up. See, it takes that forward mobilizing energy. So how does courage move, sound, and breathe? Yeah. Ready? Let's give it a shot. 1, 2, 3. Now get the arms engaged too. There can be a very place like I'm here, but it also can be excuse me. Do you all see how we all get to practice this one more? We are so intimate with the negative ones. Like, how would determination move, breathe, and sound? It might be it's a little quieter, but it's also like it's still that background. What is it? There's a little joy to it, but it still has that.
It was smile too versus
See, can you see how these are part of the same family?
Yeah.
They're connected.
She's smiling.
And the last bit with that. Ooh, yeah. It's an emotion that's completely underutilized in our current culture. Awe. See, joy, okay, y'all get joy. I know you can practice joy. But when's the last time you truly experienced awe or wonder? We spend so much time looking at the little light we made that we've lost touch with the whole tapestry of light that is the cosmos, the magic that is in the eyes of another human, the wonder that weaves us all together. How does awe move, face, and sound? When I get right now, I've risen up on my toes. There's extension. It doesn't have to move far because it's in the middle of it, but it is an upward lift, right? And what sound would go with awe other than whoa? Oh. spend too much time on the low end of the emotional spectrum practicing. I would invite you into an easy home play assignment. Yes, take a moment to vent some of the negatives, but make sure you have a column A plus column B for each day. If it's a day you're like, okay, I want to be able to just shake off some of the fear I've been feeling. I need to be able to like move that. Cool. But then what would be the opposite you'd like more of? Would it be courage, curiosity? Also in that same family of advancing. Joy? If anger is the one you began with, maybe remembering wonder afterwards. So you get that full range, the emotional palate cleanser. And it just takes a few seconds. 7 to 15 seconds, right? Of movement, of facial expression, and sound. The sound is essential. Because here's one of the cool side effects to this that I didn't mention. But it's one of the things that to come full circle, why Dr. Pert was also the most excited when she saw what was happening, not only in the like discovering the neuropeptide, but when she saw what was happening in network spinal, in people's spines at the table, is that as the range would begin to open, being able to express more and more of the full range of emotional energy. What they found is that depending on what receptors bind to the cell, it activates different gene expression in the cell. The genes are not your history, they're not your destiny. It's a range of apps that the cell can activate, and it can be edited. The emotions you play out on a regular basis are the ones that will activate those different apps. Basically, if you want to change your history, you want to change your destiny, change the range of emotions you practice daily. And that way, the things that seemed like they were carved in stone in your health or in your family, maybe were just written in sand. So, I hope that was useful. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, then with that, I love you all. And go home.
Get out of here.
Thank you.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.